Attempting to describe my father, the man, Bishop Godwin Elomobor, is the most Herculean task I've ever been presented with. Attempting to write a book or an entire dissertation would be far more easier, trust me. But nevertheless, I'm going to attempt to take you on a journey about my experiences with my loving father. I describe my father as an institution, and in this particular institution are so many classrooms filled with many tangible lessons. I'm so honored that not only was I privileged to pass through this institution, but that this institution also was able to pass through me. The first classroom in this institution is known as the classroom of fatherhood. I believe my father personally babysat me through the classroom of greatness. One of my favorite memories of my father was on my wedding day, and we'll show that clip in just a little bit. My father was the kind of father that would break protocol just to prove to you that you meant the world to him. I'll never forget on my wedding day, both my traditional and my white wedding, he made it like a whole production. He broke protocol, came on stage, danced with me, and we really were close. I was my father's last-born pet. I was his last-born and I was his pet, and everyone knew it. And we had a very unique bond. I will always miss my father. I will always love my father. I will always honor my father. And I hope that, you know, with this video production, you have just a tiny glimpse of how great my love is and will continue to be for my father. I will always make you proud, and everything you've taught me about life and about being a person of greatness, about being a person who loves people and who helps people, I will put to good use, and I will make you proud, I promise. And your legacy will go on greater, stronger than you could ever have prayed, desired, or imagined. Bishop Elomobor is the greatest father I could have ever prayed for. My father loved in such an unconditional way. I marvel at the grace and wisdom of God upon his life, because although he was a preacher, we never felt like we didn't have a father. When he was home, he was truly home, and you felt his presence. As a clergyman, he never pressured his children to act a certain way or live up to other people's standards. He loved as Jesus loved, and by doing so, he modeled to us how to truly have a relationship with Christ. There was no religious dogma when it came to his parental expectations. People would often ask, what is it like to be a preacher's kid, a PK? I would often answer and say, cool, fun, exciting, because it really was. My father was so down to earth. He was real and so fun to be around. He was hilarious. He would tell us jokes that would make us literally fall on the floor rolling with laughter. He personally, till this day, is my favorite comedian in the whole world. I honestly believe that if he wasn't a clergyman, he could have very easily taken up a career in comedy. My dad loved to tell jokes, and he also interweaved jokes when he preached. And that really drove home the message, because people would remember the point he was trying to share along with the joke that he shared. I personally learned a lot about fatherhood from my father, because he wasn't your typical African father. In a society where, you know, in African culture, we believe that the girl child is, you know, not really what people desire. Everyone desires a male child. My father truly believed that whatever a man could do, a woman could do better. He loved each and every one of his children and celebrated each of our talents equally. He never ever made us feel, or me personally, and even my sister, never ever made us feel like we couldn't be anything we wanted to be, or that we were disadvantaged for being female. As a matter of fact, he pushed us to do a lot of daring things that the typical African father would never do. My father knew how to celebrate his children. Oh my gosh, he did this to a fault. I remember when I was graduating from secondary school here in Nigeria, a couple of different things. First of all, because I decided to move back to Nigeria during my high school years, I didn't have the prom, the typical prom that we have in the States. And I remember my dad having a limousine. He ensured that he would drive it all the way to Ogun State from Lagos, just so that the limousine could usher me from my hostel down to the hall where we were graduating. He was definitely extra, but trust me, his love for people, his heart for people was so extra large that he had no choice but to show his children how much he loved them and everyone around him as well. I remember when I was graduating from high school, I won 3 of the 5 awards that were being given that day. I was most effective prefect, I was chapel prefect, I was valedictorian of my set, and I won another award, which I can't even remember right now, funny enough. But I remember that summer, we went to all the different New Generation Bible Church branches that we could. Like normally I would tour with my father, and this particular year, because I had a trophy for being valedictorian, most effective prefect, and I think it was best behaved student or something like that. With each trip we took to the different churches, he actually would read my dissertation, would read, the excerpt that they had for me for each of those awards, and re-present those trophies and awards to me. I remember we went to different churches in Lagos. I think we went to Kano Church, we went to the church in the UK, and then the one in the US. And he, trust me, so extra. He read it out again and represented those trophies and awards. What was he doing? He was trying to boost my confidence, because I particularly used to be a little bit shy. He was trying to boost my confidence and show me that you could achieve anything you wanted to achieve, being bold and being brave. He was a father that loved to the fullest, and he never spared when it came to showing his love to his children. Same thing with everyone who knew him. He was a very generous man. Actually, everyone who has had something to say about my father would always say that the one thing that stands out to them is his love for people. He was so generous. He gave to a fault. I'll forever be grateful to God for blessing me with a father as loving and intentional as Bishop Godwin Elomobor. I truly do feel like I'm blessed. The last thing I'm going to say about the classroom of fatherhood is my father would often joke and say that anyone who's going to marry his daughters must marry him first. And he would say that he'll do all the tests possible, brain tests, urine tests, blood tests, all the different kinds of tests. I told you he was a very humorous man. And he would often joke, because I was his baby and his last born pet, he would say that whoever would marry me must marry him first. And that when we get married on Saturday, he would move into the house on Sunday. And everyone would crack up so much when he says these jokes. But you know what? Being a prophet of God as he was, that actually kind of came to pass, because when I was away for the 3 years during my master's, my husband actually became quite close with my dad, and they would go out places together, do a lot of things together. I guess he was testing him in his own way, but he was also just getting to know him, and they truly developed a tight bond. So in a way, you would say that he married the person. I'll forever love you, Dad. You will forever be my hero. The classroom of mentorship. I was privileged to travel far and wide with my father to very many different countries, different cities within Nigeria, and different continents. And I had a first row seat to see his prophetic and evangelistic ministry play out. My father was definitely a prophet sent to the nations. He had such a raw anointing and a great prophetic ministry. My father is the kind of person who, before ministrations, he would pray for good weather. He would command good weather. And many people within our ministry and even outside ministries can tell you of many times where it could be raining and he would command the rain to stop, and it would stop. He would command the blind to see, and they would see, the deaf to hear, they would hear. And of course, within his ministry, I know categorically about 3 instances where the dead was brought back to life. What am I trying to say? I've learned so much about ministry, and as one who is in ministry myself, I'm privileged that I was able to learn from my father firsthand. And he was real. He wasn't one of those preachers who would preach one thing on the altar and do another thing, at home. He was consistent throughout, and he was very humorous. So a lot of times people would actually not even know when he switched. He could be joking with you, but within his joke is a prophecy. You know, there's something that we like to say about him, that he was naturally spiritual and spiritually natural. Don't joke with his jokes. Don't joke. And even when he's sleeping, take whatever he says seriously, because even within that, moment could be a word of prophecy or a word of healing that would, transform your life. I'm really grateful that I had that privilege to be mentored by such a great man of God. The classroom of humility and generosity. Proverbs 19 verse 17 says that whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord, and they will receive a reward for what they have done. My father, by far one of the most generous people here on earth that ever walked this earth. My father was the kind of person that hated to see people suffer in lack and going hungry. He hated to see people in poverty, and he felt like suffering from starvation and not having enough money to eat particularly was like the ultimate sin against humanity. He engaged in a lot of nonprofit activities to give food to the poor. Even in our churches, we would always give out foodstuffs, raw materials, raw feeding materials and ingredients to people, not just in Nigeria, but even in the States. We were always giving. And also we were a church, New Generation Bible Church is known to be a church of love and fellowship. And at any opportunity, he would love to cook for people. He was always giving to people. I was one who felt like he gave to people in excess, because in the society where we grew up in, predominantly Nigeria, you give people something when you feel like they don't have, or they're in need. But I soon discovered that actually his giving was the secret of his success. His giving was the reason why God was always blessing him, just like the scripture we just made reference to. Because he gave so much and was so generous, as he spread abroad, God always poured back into him and he never lacked. I was privileged to see my father mingle with people both high and low. I literally, I'm not exaggerating, have seen my father mingle with presidents, not only Nigeria, but even US presidents. One in particular, I've seen him, he was friends with governors, ministers. He had spiritual children who held high positions in different parts of society. But the unique thing about my father is he was so open and free with those who we considered to be well off, as well as to those who we considered to be the least in society. He didn't discriminate. He treated everyone with respect, with dignity, with love, because he felt like if you were a human being, then you were a child of God, and everyone was made special in their own way. The classroom of discipline. Now, everybody knows, if you've ever been within the Elomobor household, you know that we have an open door policy. My father set up our household in such a way that because we're in ministry, people were always in and out of our house. You were welcome to come and spend the night or visit or, just come through. But it doesn't matter where you are, whomever you may be, wherever we may be, in the States, in the UK, in Nigeria, wherever, 6:30 a.m., everyone knows they have to be up for family devotion. That instilled in me great discipline. Discipline to know that sometimes it doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter, how you feel. If you slept late, you still had to be up in the morning, to pray, to God, So that's just something that's really forever ingrained in my heart and in my mind, because you don't find that very much in this day and age. My father loved Jesus with all his heart, and he really, really instilled in us that love for Jesus as well. The classroom of genuine love for people. My father truly, truly was a lover of people. Many times when he was preaching, he would tell all his business. Even though sometimes I felt it was a bit embarrassing, he would still tell his business because he felt like if there was a lesson in it that would make you better off, he was going to share it so that you could get ahead. My father was someone who, in a society where a lot of leaders are obsessed with building structures around themselves, he was really passionate about seeing other people flourish. What amazes me about Bishop Elomobor's ministry is the open doors, the international open doors that God granted to him. Not only did God bless him to become a U.S. citizen miraculously, but he was also able to use his connections, being a U.S. citizen and having a church planted in the U.S. to get many people, to sponsor many of our students and pastors and ministers, to sponsor them to the U.S. and to make sure that they and their families were well situated. That just teaches me the lesson that if God can get the blessing through you, he indeed will get it to you. He loved people to a fault. Many times people wouldn't, repay the good that he did to them with good in return, but that never stopped him from doing good. And that's how I know that it was a supernatural grace and enablement that God had given him, and just the heart that God had given to him. He had such a childlike heart. He loved so freely. He was not, if you ask, a typical African man. Either that or God just gave him, God just gave him an unusual insight into how to truly love people, because he helped people so much. Even stewards, helpers that would come to work for us, even in the house, as like a steward or like as a help. He would sponsor them to school. He would make sure that they went ahead to get their university degrees. That is the kind of man that we had as a father. And I'm so privileged to be a part of that great legacy. The classroom of marriage. Now, I am one who speaks a lot on marriage and relationships, and I can tell you firsthand that a lot of what I've learned about just relationships and how to relate with your spouse and even your family, I learned from my parents. Now I'll tell you this, as far back as like the early 90s, like 92, 93, my father was in ministry and a very, very busy man, but he did something because he felt he didn't spend a lot of time with us. He wasn't privileged to have that much time with us. Monday evenings after, the big Sunday events, of ministering and preaching, he would take Monday evenings off, and he carved out something called Family Day. Family Day, we would do a lot of spontaneous things. We'd probably go to a restaurant to eat. Sometimes he would take us to a hotel. Within the same state where we were, he'd just create time for us to all have a getaway and relax and unwind as a family. We would go bike riding in our neighborhood. Now imagine, like in the early 90s, for you to be riding a bike with all your wife and all your children. I keep telling you, he was not the typical African father. But I remember then being in my training wheels, and I would be shouting at everyone, wait for me, wait for me, wait for me, because my brother, my sister, my mom, and my dad would be way ahead. But he did a lot of intentional things, which when I look in hindsight back at a lot of what he did, I kind of feel like he knew his time on earth was limited. He didn't really know, but he was in a hurry to really leave an indelible mark in the hearts and minds of everyone he came in contact with. I still met a lady just today who met my father just once, and he left such an indelible mark in her life because he prayed for her, he blessed her, and she was crying when I told her that my father had passed away, and she only met him once. She came to the house to actually do our nails, and she said that the audience he gave her just left such an indelible mark in her heart and mind. And she was just crying and weeping, and I was just thinking, what kind of man was this? He impacted people in such a unique way and always left a presence. He always, left a mark, and it would be so hard to remember him. It would be so hard to not remember him, rather. But back to my story. Just being intentional about loving people, loving his family. We would do a lot of things on Family Day on Mondays, and I'm so grateful for having a father like that. Bishop Godwin Elomobor loved his family and loved his wife so much. He would take his beautiful wife places, especially when they newly got married, and he would show her off to everyone who cared to know that she was married to him. His children were his pride and joy. He was never ashamed to show us affection in public and give us accolades. My parents' marriage is the single proof to me that God single-handedly handpicks and carves out spouses for people. It's a known saying within the Nugent family that only Mrs. Antonia Oyebola Elomobor could marry Bishop Elomobor. She is a woman who loves the Lord with the same passion and frequency as he did. For someone to leave his banking job as a multimillionaire in the 1980s and say, I want to go into full-time ministry, and his wife be in full support without any reservations, was simply divine. My father was an extrovert to the core. He needed my mother's calm and gentle personality to balance his eccentric and boisterous personality. They balanced each other perfectly. My mom was the peacemaker who was always there to pacify my father with his spiritual children whenever he scolded them and they fell out. They were truly a match made in heaven. I often heard my mother say that her first assignment was to my father and not to the church. This high calling made sense to me much more in the last few months leading up to his departure from this side of eternity. My mother truly served Bishop Elomobor. They were friends and their love was inseparable. The classroom of joy unspeakable and enjoying life. Now, of course, my father had his own share of challenges. Saying that he was so full of joy and fun-loving does not mean that he didn't have down times. Of course, when you're a man with such an open heart and you give to people and try to help people, of course, you're prone to getting hurt. And he had his own share of hurts and battles and things like that. But one thing I can say categorically, living with him inside, I can tell you that even if he went to bed, maybe a little bit sad or downcast, he would always wake up with joy. He would always wake up singing a new song. My father, and I have to say myself, and a lot of us now, his family members who have lived with him, he rubbed off on us because he was someone who, could just be walking through the house and he would have a burst, he would just make a joyful noise, like a random one, he could just be walking and just shout, hallelujah, or I love you, Jesus, or something fun like that and spontaneous. And I've caught on to that. My children have caught on to that. Because even scriptures tell us that with joy shall we draw from the wells of salvation. A merry heart does good like medicine. And I'm so grateful that I have that legacy, of just joy and being full of appreciation for life, because life, as we can see, is a privilege and it's not always guaranteed. We have to make the most out of it, and joy is one necessary requirement to drawing from that well. My Father, I have loved you in life, and even in death I continue to love and honor you. I will forever miss you, my sweetie cutie pie. You know how we do it. That's what we would always say. You know how we do it. I do. I will forever remember how we lived life on earth in love. Adieu, my king. I will miss you forever. Love from your favorite last-born pet, Abobo. Boboya. I love you, Father.